Hello and welcome to the Trust and Influence in B2B podcast. I'm your host, Joel Harrison. As the title suggests, this podcast is a broad remit covering the evolving challenges associated with generating trust and influencing buyers in all areas of B2B. These are perennially tough challenges at the best of times that take on a new level of urgency and resonance in what is a rapidly changing landscape. Episodes are released weekly, so please don't forget to subscribe and to like or rate this podcast. We really appreciate your feedback. So in this episode, we're going to return to the topic of account-based marketing, which is a strategy very much in focus right now, for me at least, given that the Global ABM conference is taking place on November the 5th. And in particular, I wanted to zero in on the challenges associated with account selection, which often isn't given the attention it deserves, given how absolutely fundamental it is to success. And I want to explore the trust challenges associated with this given area, given how pivotal it is aligning sales and marketing towards success. To explore this issue, who better to speak to than Dan Shaw, who's CEO of Funnel Fuel, who are helping reshape the world of B2B advertising and providing more transparency in terms of a data-driven approach. So Dan is what you might euphemistically describe as a seasoned member of the B2B marketing community. He's been involved in a number of B2B marketing organizations, and it's obviously a subject which he's extremely passionate about. So Dan, welcome.
Thanks, Joel. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, likewise. It should be good. We need to say this is a sponsored episode, but we're looking forward to discussing the issues associated with it and really interested in digging into all the topics around this issue. So first of all, let's get started. Have I described Funnel Fuel adequately as an organisation? Is that description sum up what you do, what you're trying to achieve?
I like it. Reshaping an industry is always quite a nice claim. Look, where we sit in this ecosystem is we genuinely believe that B2B marketers can be better served in terms of delivering better outcomes from B2B advertising if they use data and technology with the talent required to make those two things work correctly. They'll get better business outcomes. And our business is entirely built around trying to make our B2B marketing clients see that, witness it, and being able to actually demonstrate it based on real data. So that's the world we're in. Okay,
fantastic. Right, that's great to get it to understand from the top where you guys are in the market, because it's a very interesting company. So you've written about how poor data quality and account lists can derail ABM campaigns before they even begin. Why do you think this is still so prevalent in 2025?
I think ABM is a huge part of almost every B2B marketer's strategy and has been for a number of years. I think the frustration, maybe the post you're referring to that I put on LinkedIn, I wasn't trying to kind of suggest that the market wasn't trying to make things better, but I think we're all being convinced that account-based marketing, account-based advertising, account-based experience, account-based everything is somehow going to completely revolutionise a B2B marketer's life. And I think the foundational part, the A of any ABM, ABA, ABX piece is neglected. And I think the reason for that is, to be honest, fairly straightforward. I think the actual execution of ABM campaigns sits so far away from the origination of those leads, those lists, that inevitably things are going to go wrong. There's just a huge disconnect between that sales team, whether it's a BDR team, whether it's an account management team, and a marketing team who are given the lists, and all the intermediaries that get involved along the way, who are adding value, the agencies, the technology partners. But that supply chain does mean that there's a lack of accountability around that source, that account list, the source of truth. It's assumed that somebody will pick up the slack, I think, somewhere. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, that's just not the case.
I guess also in any kind of B2B marketing campaign, often there's just an action just to get going, isn't there?
Which speed. Yeah. Everybody wants everything done yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think it's those hard yards around things like account-based marketing where you truly need to understand what the outcome, what the output is expected to be. And although it might delay things, it ultimately leads to better outcomes. And I think you and I have discussed this off camera. I think about account-based marketing as a concept, and we're all very comfortable with talking about it nowadays, and the one-to-many, one-to-few, one-to-one concepts. And the other part of it is, of course, what kind of accounts are you targeting? Are they growth accounts? Are they opportunity accounts, conquest accounts? Or are they simply retention opportunities? We must retain those.
Yeah.
I have yet to see a list in 2 years that separates those three things out. And I would suggest that really should be foundational. You should know whether or not the ABM campaign is designed to attract new customers, grow opportunities, or to retain valuable customers.
And you're not seeing that in terms of the lists that you're being sent for
I've yet
campaigns.
To see one. And so we talk about outdated lists, and we see a lot of those, and people don't challenge them because they're often just extracted from a CRM. Let's be completely candid. The list itself is very rarely influenced by people who've got the smarts to understand what they're trying to achieve. It's an export from a CRM. I spent a lot of my career working on the commercial side of things, and I can tell you now, anybody in a sales role or a BDR role doesn't really keep CRM as up to date as we'd all like to believe they.
Yeah.
If you're exporting from a platform blindly and then using that as the basis for an entire campaign, I think you're almost guaranteed to be set up to fail. You from the very beginning, you're not really thinking through the output. You're just jumping on the ABM bandwagon, dare I say, and extracting a list and hoping that will therefore create an ABM program. And it's not the case.
So it's that due diligence at the starting point. The more effort you can put in at the starting point to get your data right, we get it kind of understood and quantified right and structured right, and actually just given the right buckets to sit in, dare I say it, that's going to pay dividends, right?
It is, but it's not particularly exciting. Nobody gets as excited about data as I would like them to. If you're talking about account-based marketing, make sure the account you are basing, or the set of accounts you're basing activity on, are relevant and clear around why they're on that list. Why are they part of your strategy? What are you hoping to achieve as a result of it? And I think ultimately, and I know we're going to spend a bit of time talking about this, when you think about where I believe the industry needs to get to, or where we would all be benefiting from, is getting those account lists as fit for purpose as you possibly can. And that's not going to happen overnight, and it's not down to one individual. There isn't a single person sitting in any vendor organization who has sole ownership over that set of accounts, even in organizations who've dedicated resource to account-based marketing and have really got it good. And you and I know some of those individuals. They've appeared on stage with you. They are few and far between, but even in those organizations, they are still not the kind of single source of truth around what the account list should. That comes from sales. It comes from the strategic direction the sales organization wants to go in. So let's involve them in the conversation. And it comes back to the thing you said at the introduction of this podcast. It sadly showcases that sales and marketing are as aligned as we'd all like them to be.
Absolutely. I mean, in some ways, it would be very boring if sales and marketing became aligned, because we'd have much less to talk about, wouldn't we? But if there's some miracle, someone waved the magic wand and everyone was aligned. But
could we talk about success potential?
Well, that is true. That is true. But I guess the answer to this is it creates the opportunity, right, for people who can get it right to be more successful than those
I
who
genuinely
struggle.
believe that's the case. Yes.
And I think this is, we were discussing again before this. We want this. This is a very important topic we're bringing up here. It's the perennial challenge here, and it is about, rather than just moaning about what's going wrong, it's about focusing on positives about how to get things right and be better at what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So,
how can we improve things? And how can we help marketing sales become more closely aligned?
Yep.
And it's not just down to the individuals and in the clients. It's down to us as well as partners, as part of this ecosystem, to help our marketing deliver that message into the organization, to help them justify the time commit they're asking of their colleagues in building a great ABM list. And if your partners aren't giving you the ammunition to go back into the sales organization and say, this is worth you spending a day, 2 days, really thinking it through, because the output is going to be X, Y, and Z, then we're going to end up with the same problem again. We need to incentivize, reward, and get people excited about what could happen if they really bought into this.
So let's just talk more about that in terms of that relationship, because obviously this podcast's about trust. There's a pretty key premise of it. Trust is critical, presumably having good alignment. Both sides have got to trust one another in order to be able to actually have a communication and deliver the information, set things up in the right way. You'd agree with that?
Absolutely agree with that. And strangely, I'm kind of going to go transparency, then trust.
Then trust, right.
Because I do believe if there was a little bit more transparency from the marketing team in conjunction with the partners that they select to deliver on these campaigns in terms of realistic outputs, that would enable them to go back to the sales organization and get their buy-in from the beginning. So being transparent around, there is no silver bullet.
Yeah.
And suddenly revolutionizing or improving account list isn't suddenly going to change everything.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee without a foundational account list that is representative and accurate, everything else that follows is going to fail.
Yeah.
So if we can be transparent with the sales commercial organization around what marketing can do in terms of impact, in terms of influence, and I think that transparency piece is going to lead to a higher level of trust, which means people are going to start to allocate time to support the marketing function in developing better lists that are more robust, that have been challenged a bit more, been considered, and come with a heap of data that often doesn't exist.
So, I mean, I completely agree with you. Transparency feels like a precursor to trust.
Yes.
And ability to have a dialogue, mutual understanding and mutual collaboration to achieve an objective, and transparency is critical to that. So you're probably not going to have trust without transparency.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
So, we've talked in the past, and you've cited some examples of poor examples of TALs, target account lists. like, for example, companies that no longer exist, or kind of the US government or something like that. I mean, I guess errors like this, massively affect credibility and trust within those stakeholders, right? If you're that's your starting point, that's your list of 250 companies, and it includes one of those, then that undermines trust massively, I suppose.
I think it's almost a great indicator of just how far away sales are from trusting marketing to deliver real outcomes.
Right.
Because if they can't even invest the time required to make that list, meaning it shows that they're genuinely believing marketing can't deliver.
So that's an indication of sales not trusting marketing, or marketing not trusting sales.
Sadly, in this case, I think the origination of these lists is very often out of the sales org.
Right.
And I think in these cases where you described Lehman Brothers being listed on an account, Enrolls and US government, although at the moment that's a pretty small target list given the shutdown.
Yes.
But all of those are examples of where sales has not invested time into delivering marketing a list that they believe is going to therefore be impactful. And therefore they're simply just dumping a list to, I'll be honest, get marketing out of the room and let them go and do the colouring in around an ABM list, rather than believing that marketing team can truly help me do my job. So the lack of quality in the list to me is a beautiful example of sales not seeing the potential of what marketing can help them achieve.
Yeah.
Because if it did, those sales teams, those sales individuals, and the sales culture would be aligned to giving marketing everything they could possibly give them to do the job better. And it wouldn't be saying target Enron for me, please.
So they're fobbing them off, essentially.
At best.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I would have kind of, I always come in, funnily enough, on the marketer side on these things. I would have seen that was a lack of trust from, it's lack of trust both ways, isn't it? Really, probably.
Yes.
It's almost incidental about who's least trusting where. So, what are the biggest risks to prospect trust when an ABM campaign is built on flawed and outdated data? I mean, it's just going to look terrible.
It's going to look terrible, and you and I have touched on the overall issues around the whole ecosystem in terms of transparency. And I think when I look at some of these account lists, and organisationally, when I speak to the teams around the data, the engineering product teams, who are often heavily involved in looking at these account lists and trying to make them as usable as humanly possible, I think one of the things that occurs to me is we're never going to be able to deliver on the promises that I personally think are so important in this industry to establish that level of trust. And when you see account lists that have outdated companies that did exist once but no longer exist, and then you speak to the marketing team around what other suppliers in this ecosystem are coming back to, there's a default position of, for example, coming back and saying, well, yeah, we can cover every single organisation in your target account list, 100% coverage rates, no issues whatsoever. And the fact that I see so few target account lists that actually could be addressed with 100% accuracy, it worries me that we're just defaulting to this idea of not challenging or having a conversation. We receive a list as an industry. We nod and smile and say, yeah, we can achieve everything you want there. And it's not always possible, even with the cleanest lists. Account-based marketing is hard. And the trust element, like, are you going to be able to genuinely move the needle with these 2,000 organisations that are the most important to me and my marketing team and the sales team, and indeed the overall organisation? If your default position is, oh yes, 100%, can cover everything, we're already in dangerous waters.
Yeah.
And that is a combination of poor account lists, which mean it's not possible to get 100% coverage, and a lack of conversation in the industry about how challenging this is. If you want to target the 2,000 largest enterprises in the world, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You want to target a company like Funnel Fuel, a smallish but growing company in London, that's really tough. We're in a building, we're on the second floor of 4 floors. The ability to really accurately target a company like Funnel Fuel is very challenging. So we need to start talking to people around not just the quality of the account lists, but even with the best list in the world, if somebody wanted to just target the Funnel Fuel organisation, it's pretty much impossible. What I can do is give you some great ways to target Funnel Fuel and other similar businesses. Because in my office complex, there tend to be similar companies to me. So I think the account list is a huge problem, but I think the way that we, and I'm talking about the entire industry, deals with those account lists is a problem. We've got to be more honest about what's achievable. And I very rarely see 100% being an achievable number. It's just not possible. And we should be comfortable saying that to our marketing clients. It might be the quality of the list, might be who's on the list. They're just too small to send out really solid signals that we know we are only targeting a company like Funnel Fuel. So today's about that account list piece, but I think the whole issue of transparency and trust around account-based marketing always begins with the A. Like whether it's a poor list or a great list, then have a second conversation about how much can we really do with that. We'd all love to assume we can do everything. We can't.
Yeah, if you're not, I mean, for me, if you're not really investing in getting that A right, well, what's the point in doing account-based marketing? You might as well be doing demand generation or something a bit less targeted, less
Remove the A.
resonant.
Remove the A.
And fine, and do it, get on with it. It'd be great. But one of the problems is, am I right in thinking one of the problems sometimes with the data is that it gets pulled from multiple sources? It's not simply a matter of sales giving marketing a list. It comes from multiple sources. Even if it's from sales, it comes from different systems, different platforms. Is that right?
Okay. I think I've managed to honestly ask about 8 or 9 marketers where their account lists come from, and I've had 8 or 9 different answers. The commonality is it's a combination. You are right. Absolutely, it's a combination. It's sales. Tell us who you want to target, who you know, and also tell us who you want to target or be engaged with that maybe you don't.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work that marketing teams around, building ICPs that then become part of that account-based marketing. We've invested a lot in trying to support clients around this area because it's a really tough ask. It's really tough. In the consumer world, there's the phrase lookalike modelling, which I always kind of smile around because to me it just implies we're not going to target anymore. We're just going to release the hounds. My favourite phrase, spray and pray, kind of comes to mind. Account-based marketing in terms of using that same kind of approach, not lookalike modelling, I think is so powerful because one of the things that we've really focused on is being able to view that account list through a number of different lenses. Mm-hmm. So on a very basic level, if we're sent an account list of 500 organisations, we may naturally see a skew within that list towards oil and gas as a sector, maybe the financial services sector, with a specific sweet spot of, for example, 5,000 as a minimum employee headcount. By being able to present back to a client the entire view of the world around that, in other words, here is every single oil and gas company that fits the criteria that your list looks like, we start to have a bit more of a dialogue with clients around how we can help them build those lists as well. So I would love to get to a place where that account list is truly dynamic, because it should be. Every organisation does a very static list of prospects day to day. It changes and it should change. But also take as many different signals as you can and ask the question, if you're targeting BP, Shell and another oil and gas company, why not targeting these 6 oil and gas companies? And that kind of conversation piece around the A piece of ABM often then leads to the next piece, which is what's the real output that you're expecting? What's the real win for you? And suddenly you're having a conversation with a marketer where you can be part of building that account list rather than just a passenger. And it helps. It helps them. It helps you as a supplier understand how to hit the objectives they're trying to achieve. But it's not just taking a list and interrogating a marketer around where that list came from.
When you start talking about signals, then you're starting to bring in another community here, another kind of member of this body of organisations or players in this realm of account-based marketing, which is the vendors and the account the intent providers, things like that. There's a trust dynamic to that as well, isn't there? Right, because you need to make sure you can trust those those players in this market and understand how they play into this as well. So that creates other challenges in terms of refining that list and making sure it's as fit for purpose as it can possibly be.
Exactly, and I do think that intent is still a bit of a black box. Understandably, it's driven by algorithms that identify at a very sophisticated level buying intent at a corporate level. But you are absolutely spot on. Any organisation that's working with any of those intent suppliers should be using those intent suppliers as a key part of that ABM build. They should be building a list based around who's actually in market. Right? We all know who we'd like to sell to, but actually who's in market to buy the product. And as another angle to make that target account list as accurate, as relevant as it can be, I wish more organisations were leaning into those intent partnerships, of which most B2B tech vendors have signed up to at least one of them, to help them execute ABM better and in a more relevant, timely fashion.
It feels like it's a very increasingly interconnected web of providers, right?
Yes,
people.
Yeah.
And so you can generally get things passed through from one ecosystem to another, I suppose. I guess I was going to ask, how if you're in the situation where you've got relatively shaky ground with your ABM, what's the best way to get the value out of your program in this situation? I mean, you'd probably say, well, don't start if your ground is shaky, but a lot of people do. What can you do? What might a marketer be able to do when they've started perhaps on the wrong foot? Is it then about going back to transparency and just saying, look, you know, I mean, you don't want to necessarily start blaming people when you're so halfway down the track, but at the same time, any tactics you can recommend people could adopt to try and mitigate challenges that they've created for themselves by preparation that wasn't quite as good as it might have been, should we say?
You know my background here, Joel.
Yeah.
So my background spans right back to pre-digital. So I'm the print dinosaur from many years ago. You couldn't do anything in those days. Like, let's be completely candid. You sent your to the publisher, went to the printing press, and that was done. We live in a world where you're able to adjust and amend programs in real time on the fly. I'm not suggesting we all get used to kind of launching huge marketing campaigns and trying to refuel in the air and take on challenges that are just not possible. But I think when it comes to account-based marketing, you should have some flexibility built in anyway, based on the reality that any list of accounts that you could possibly be targeting will always be changing. So the flexibility should be built in there, I would argue, for any ABM program as a given. And I would strongly encourage marketers not to be afraid to just kind of pause, stop, start, adjust. I don't see this as a world where we now need to press go on January the 2nd or January the 4th, 5th, as it will be next year, and hope that by the end of the year, what we set out to achieve is achieved without any real changes or adaptations. I genuinely look around the marketing community, and this is one thing I do feel very passionate about. I'm really, really excited by. I would suggest most marketers actually are quite comfortable making changes mid-campaign.
In flight.
I think there's a willingness now to go, if it's not quite working, I'm not just going to watch this die slowly. I'm going to change it. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to adjust it.
Yeah.
So my advice would be, as marketers, don't be afraid. And even if it leads to some tough conversations, because the amount of work that any account-based marketing program involves is very front-ended. It's finding those accounts, identifying them. It's tough, but if you've got it wrong, you're better recognizing that, realigning, restarting or adjusting, depending on how much of it you've got wrong, and go again.
I mean, I think you're right. We live in a world of expectations of programmatic in-flight adaptation, recalibration. I'm doing a lot of work on thought leadership, and it's being able to be responsive to events, right? Real life, real world events. What's going on with your clients? People coming in, moving out of opportunity. So it does feel like it would feel very retrograde to me if we were set in stone and we couldn't move until the last dollar was spent of the campaign.
I agree with that, and I genuinely, that's the bit where I kind of I'm smiling, because I see the marketing community do feel like they've lent into that opportunity to not just sign the check for the program and watch it run. They understand that this is a world now, particularly the digital world, where you can change things mid-flight. You can really get your hands in there and rip something to pieces, even if it's only halfway through.
Okay, so we talked about we talk about pragmatic steps and how we can do things differently, and we're going to adjust things along the way. But really what we're trying to get to is like a situation whereby this is got as right as it can be from the word go. And a part of that is about leadership, isn't it? Right. And a part of it is about culture. So what can marketing leaders or CMOs do to build that correct culture from the word go?
The sales and marketing alignment is the recurring theme. I mean, I genuinely believe that this is one of those areas of marketing where in the B2B community, there is an opportunity to go in with tangible evidence to the sales org and demonstrate what could be achieved with their collaboration. And I think the more we move towards this world of being able to demonstrate impact, so being able to give our marketing clients that opportunity to go back into sales organizations, show exactly what impact they've had at an account level, get salespeople, get sales organizations excited. And I think that marketing community should lean much more heavily on the vendor community to support them in doing that.
And is data competence part of this as well, though, right? Because not sometimes marketers aren't always that comfortable with data and being able to scrutinize it. It's just about that attention to detail, perhaps sometimes as well.
I would say any ABM program is going to require a significant understanding of data, significant data competency to even really execute. And I'm not suggesting the marketer has to be that person, but somebody. And we spoke earlier about the supply chain being a bit of a problem in terms of the list just gets passed through. And of course, everybody's adding value in their own way, but it kind of means that everybody's assuming somebody else will do it. I think for those marketers who maybe either don't feel they or the organisation has that level of data competence, they should challenge their vendors to supply, because you cannot run an account-based marketing campaign without a deep understanding of data. So the partner you choose should take that burden away from you and should be sitting next to you when you have a conversation with the sales team around, let me help you understand the questions we need to ask. So we don't want to know that organisation you want to target oil and gas. I'd like to understand why specifically you'd like to target BP in that specific office with that specific message, and what the sales organisation is asking of you as a marketer. Is it around net new names, new opportunities, open the door for me? The more we ask those questions, the more we can then deliver the right data back to the marketer to inform the sales organisation they've done exactly what they've been tasked to do.
Okay, so talk about are there any practical steps that Funnel Fuel or others are taking to rebuild trust in ABM campaigns through stronger data foundations? I mean, you're very much in favour of trying to build best practice in and encourage people to do the right thing. So what kind of things are you up to try and help people in that journey?
One of the key things is talking around what is and isn't possible. This notion that an account-based marketing campaign has to be able to touch each and every single account that is in that program is just not going to say impossible. As I said, there are certain account lists where that is definitely achievable. But I think one of the things I'm really trying to drive forward, and I'm trying to encourage the industry to move forward with, is it's not a silver bullet. You cannot physically target every organisation. And I think the more we talk around what is and isn't possible, the more it will help clients understand where account-based marketing is best deployed, as opposed to account-based marketing becoming the kind of default for any B2B marketing, because it is not right and it's not relevant for example, that SMB world. If you're trying to target small, medium businesses, taking an account-based approach is very rarely the right thing to do, because it's really hard to accurately target individual organisations. Now, as a collective, it makes sense. I want to target all organisations in the UK between 50 and 250. That makes sense as a target. It's not an ABM campaign.
Right.
And I think where we've kind of slipped is this idea that account-based marketing can be applied to all B2B marketing tactics, and it simply can't. And I think the more we as an industry talk to people around, okay, this is really what you can do and this is what you should expect on the result of that, the more likely we are to get people understanding when it really is account-based marketing versus I'd just like a little bit of account insight, which is a byproduct of any good ad campaign, but it's not account-based marketing.
No, there's a definite distinction there. But I mean, one of the problems with this thing, underpinning all of this, right, is that marketing is a fashion industry, and there's shiny object syndrome kicks in, right? And there's, that's exciting new widget over there. I go and play with that. How do you, because I imagine you're not saying don't get excited about new things, but it's about finding the balance, right, between getting those basics, those fundamentals right, and then you've got time to look at the new stuff as well to work out how to integrate that if it's appropriate.
If it's appropriate and if it can demonstrably deliver value. And again, this comes back to this whole conversation around there are some really impressive things you can do. And by the way, advertising is just one component of the whole ABM mix. I'm very much focused on the advertising output here, but if you think about the ability to truly leverage things like digital out of home on an account-based marketing campaign, it's doable. You find the head office, you find the real estate that is available from a digital advertising perspective. It's not rocket science, but what is important is being able to show causality. So I can sponsor roundabouts near any big tech vendor with a Funnel Fuel message, but I want to be able to show that it's actually having an impact. That's where I think we should get excited. It's not because you can, it's can you demonstrate that's actually going to make a difference? Will it really make a difference if I incorporate digital out of home in terms of how much time we'll stick with BP, how much time BP or Shell spend on my site as a vendor? How can you really prove that digital out of home activity has had an impact? And the honest answer is we can't prove it with 100% certainty, but we can certainly use data to inform you that it's moved the needle. You're seeing more traffic, reading about the kind of stuff you want them to be reading about. So I think the shiny things can be good as long as you kind of make sure that you're measuring it in the same way you measure everything. I want to show impact. Again, it links back to demonstrating value. And that account list will get better when you go back to the potential source of that data from a sales perspective and show them what you've been able to achieve.
And you're much more likely to be able to demonstrate value if you've done the hard work up front to create the right list. This has been a fascinating conversation. And Dan, you're so passionate about this, so we could talk about this for a lot longer, I'm sure, but we're kind of just about out of time now. I'd just like you to kind of think about one last message you leave people? If you want someone to listen to this or to watch this and to have taken one thing away around this topic, of kind of finding the right account, developing the right account, what would it be? What's your one message to people? What's the one thing they should do?
I think personally it comes back to this idea of you are not going to be able to, as a marketer, and I don't believe any marketer thinks they should be the source of an account list. So if we focus specifically on that account list piece, I think spend the time trying to convince the people in your organization who sit on those account lists that you want access to buy into the idea of not just giving you access to them, but giving you access to them with some real data attached to them. Because the more you know about that account list, not just the accuracy, and even not just, is it a opportunity client? Is it a retention client? Is it a growth client? The more you know about that, the more you're going to be able to align the marketing strategies with the outputs that individual or that group needs. I don't think there is a world in which you can kind of coerce and it becomes mandated. I need access. And I think a lot of marketers have access to the CRM systems. They're told to do an export themselves. You can convince your colleagues that ultimately by spending the time with you to get the A bit right, you're going to be able to deliver an output that aligns with their overall objectives. I think you're going to be in a much better place. And you're sort of going to find champions that don't just give you better data, but become real advocates for you as a marketer. And let's try and get to that place where sales and marketing is fully aligned. And maybe this is one of those routes to do it.
And this is a definition really of what B2B marketing calling the commercial marketer, right? Having that deep commercial focus, understanding and alignment. Dan, it's been fantastic talking to you about this today. Thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Thank you, Joe. Really enjoyed it.
Really enjoyed it too. So we're doing this partly because this episode in timing, because the global ABM conference is coming up on November the 5th, and you're going to be there, Dan, aren't you, on that?
Very excited.
So it should be a great day. About 600 marketers. Anybody in ABM will be there. It'll be great fun. So if you haven't got your tickets and you're interested in ABM, whether you're an ABM ninja and you're looking to kind of hone your skills, or whether you're a newcomer and you're looking to understand what all the fuss is about, it's the place to be. So get your tickets now. If you use Joel25, you can get a 25% discount, which is obviously brilliant. So you should have a look at that. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please subscribe and please like and rate us. We'd really appreciate your comments and your thoughts. And there's episodes dropping weekly. But for now, from me and from Dan, thanks very much.